यमुनतीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatho Jayamudiraye Ashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankhayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Iswaram. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण. So we are continuing our discussion on the essence of the Bhagavad Gita here in the Sri Radha Gopal Krishna temple in Balram Desh, session 5 on this date, the 8th of October 2022. So, in the previous session, we were seeing chapters 9 to 12, sorry, 10, 11, 12, 10 to 12. We were seeing where Krishna is concluding the description of Bhakti Yoga. That is where 12th chapter and how uh, a devotee becomes very dear to Krishna. That was the subject matter of discussion. Now, from 13th chapter till the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita is called the Jnana section of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, one may ask why Jnana is now being presented, because if Bhakti is the ultimate in the yoga ladder, you say that Bhakti is on the top rung, then why Jnana? No. Because two, three things are there. In 12th chapter, Krishna says, or he rather promises that I will deliver my devotees from repeated birth and death. So that promise is being fulfilled by Krishna in chapters 13 to 18 by supplying the philosophical knowledge necessary to get ourselves out of this material situation. This is how every part of Bhagavad Gita becomes relevant. Although this is called the Jnana section of the Bhagavad Gita, this is actually a process which is described how to get bhakti through knowledge. Because knowledge also can help us in developing bhakti. So, whatever we use as a means to increase and improve our bhakti, all those things can be used. Because without bhakti, whether it is jnana or whether it is anything else, karma, it's all useless if it is not culminating in bhakti. So, our idea is that whatever instructions are given in the Bhagavad Gita, we use it. All the knowledge that we gain, we use it to improve and perfect our devotion to Krishna. So, in that sense, every instruction in Bhagavad Gita adds value to our bhakti, or whether it is directly connecting and directly instructing about bhakti, or it is instructing us indirectly through karma and jnana. Ultimately, it all becomes useful when we employ it to increase our bhakti. So, 13th chapter, Nature, Enjoyer, and Consciousness, is the title of this chapter. And in this, Arjuna will ask questions about Kshetra and Kshetrajna. That is, Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga is the name of this chapter. So, Arjuna will ask Krishna about Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So, what is Kshetra, which is body? Kshetrajna, different types, knower of the body. So, that is at the same time Jiva and Paramatma, because Jiva is the knower of the individual body. Paramatma is the sum total knower of every body. So, and then Kshetra, what is Kshetra? Is the field. Field means body. That is Kshetra. And then Krishna continues to explain how knowledge can be utilized by the Jivatma to get liberation. And in 13th chapter, Krishna also describes the elements of knowledge, 20 items of knowledge Krishna gives in the 13th chapter. So we will just be briefly going through all the 20. And then it is in this 13th chapter, Krishna gives that 24 items of the creation, all the elements. So that also is very briefly discussed in this chapter. And then Krishna explains how Prakriti, Purusha, and their union works. Because we know that Bhagavad Gita has 5 subject matters: Jiva, Ishvara, Prakriti, Kala, Karma. Correct? It is the 5 subject matters of Bhagavad Gita. So how those 5 subject matters are interlinked and work together, that type of a discussion also takes place in the 13th chapter because it's jnana. This is discussion about all these points of knowledge. That is why many times devotees find 13th chapter a bit dry because it is all empirical knowledge is being discussed. Even karma, the discussion may not be so interesting, but still it is interesting for the regular devotee because everybody has to go through this cycle of karma. So that to a great extent interests us. And when it comes to the bhakti section of the Bhagavad Gita, all those who are devotionally inclined will feel very, very attracted and interested to discuss that. Then it comes to 13th to 18th chapter, it is basically all types of knowledge acquired. So we may not feel so. And then at the end of the 13th chapter, Krishna speaks about Jnana Chakshu. That is how you see everything through knowledge. And actually, how do you see Krishna? Actually, how you see the supreme absolute truth? How do you see reality? You cannot see it with naked eyes. You have to see it through the knowledge that you acquire through Shastra. That is why the word Shastra Chakshu is also there. Why? Because Shastra is the mother who is pointing to us, who is our father, which is Krishna. So Shastra that way, she is also Veda Mata. Veda is also called as Veda Mata because she is the ultimate mother who will show who is the father. Because obviously, as a principle, we know that only the mother can point us to who the real father is. So Vedas, Shastra, they act as mother. And we are expected to see things through the eye of Shastra, through the eye of knowledge. So actually, Jnana Chakshu means through knowledge only you can see. Now you may think that, but I am seeing everything in this world through this naked eye. That kind of seeing is also there, no? But you think about it. What you see will make sense only when you know about it, no? You understand? What we see will make some sense when we know about it. Like, for example, if a 2-year-old child is looking at that clock, it sees the clock, but what is the use? It doesn't know, the child doesn't know that it shows time, for example, it's seeing something. So actually, even in this world, we understand about this Jnana Chakshu with this simple example. If you don't know what it is, then even if you see it, you don't see it. Understand? That is why, even though we see Krishna's Archa form, we don't see him because we don't know that he is not different from the same Krishna and Guru. See, Jnana Chakshu, how it works. So until our eyes are opened through the instructions from Shastra, we don't see anything. We don't see anything properly. We see, just like the 2-year-old child looking at the clock, we also see the Archa Vigraha form of Krishna, but we don't see Krishna there. We see the Archa. We see the Archa Avatara because it is told in Shastra that Archa Avatara is Krishna. But actually, we are seeing the deity and we are appreciating the deity, not appreciating Krishna. There is a big difference. So, in that sense, Jnana will help us to see the Supreme Lord. So, Arjuna is asking about Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetram, Kshetrajna, and then Jnanam, Jnayam. These are the 6 questions asked by Krishna. That what is knowledge, what is to be known, what is Prakriti, what is Purusha, what is Kshetra, what is Kshetrajna. Like this, he is asking, and then Krishna is giving the answer, saying that, as I said, Kshetra means body, Kshetrajna means one who knows the body, and the Jivatma, Jiva is the one Kshetrajna, and Ishvara is the ultimate Kshetrajna in the sense that he knows or he sees all the bodies. Okay, so then that discussion continues. Perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, the constitution of the soul, and the constitution of the super soul is known in terms of Vedic literature as jnana. So, if this is Srila Prabhupada's purport, the sentence in Prabhupada's purport, which gives us the correct idea. This is the opinion of Krishna, Prabhupada says. So, what is jnana? Perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, constitution of the soul, constitution of the super soul. If you know these three things, if you can distinguish between these three things, Prabhupada says that is knowledge and that is the opinion of Krishna. And then Krishna continues to say how it is that, and he says that knowledge of the field of activities and knower of activities is described by various sages in Vedic writings, especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasonings as to cause and effect. Now, Krishna, as I was saying yesterday, Krishna will always quote the Vedas because Vedas are given by him, and he himself, by quoting it, he is establishing the authority of the Vedas himself. Otherwise, if he speaks something differently and it is not to be found in the Vedas, then everybody will question the Vedas, saying that how can you say that Veda is the word of God? Because the word of God is something different. Therefore, you will find many places in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna quoting Veda Vedanta just to establish. And then, field of activity. Krishna says the five great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, and the mind. Five sense objects: desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms and convictions. All these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. You would have all studied this in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and it is a very big subject matter. If we discuss all these 24 things, that will take out our entire couple of sessions. So, just in summary, to know that how the Mahatattva, the Pancha Mahabhuta, and then the Panchendriyas, and then out of that, in the Panchendriyas, you have the five Karmendriyas and the five Jnanendriyas, and then the mind, then the object of the senses: desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, the convictions. All this put together is this Kshetra. So this is basically the material existence consists of all these things. Now, why should we understand this? Why should we understand this? That is also a very important thing. We may think that because Bhakti is everything, Krishna is everything, I have to do Bhakti for Krishna. So what is the need of all these things? One thing you should know that Krishna doesn't simply insert something in the Bhagavad Gita because he has nothing else to do. No. By very clearly having a view, by very clearly having an understanding of these things, it helps us to delineate the material from the spiritual. Because we all have some material intelligence, right? And that intelligence is covered by Maya, right? So, once we develop a clear understanding of this is matter and not spirit, that also helps us to open the door of moksha. Because you have to very clearly delineate, otherwise you may think that because mind is very strong, as Krishna says in chapter 6, because mind is very strong, it may even misguide us and to think that something material is spiritual, right? Doesn't it happen many times? That we are not having a clear understanding of what is matter and what is spirit. So we may be misguided. So we should also have a very clear understanding of what is spirit. And then Krishna speaks about the elements of knowledge. In shlokas 8 to 12 in this chapter, Krishna speaks about the 20 items of knowledge. Humility. When we speak of knowledge, and when we study the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we actually understand what is knowledge. Because after saying the enlisting items, Krishna says, these I declare to be knowledge, and beside this, whatever there may be is ignorance. And out of the items of knowledge, The first one, Krishna says, is humility. So, knowledge means humility. Next, same theme Krishna continues, pridelessness. So you may wonder, no? Doesn't humility mean pridelessness? We have this doubt, right? So we can draw that number line we have drawn from standard 6 when we study mathematics. Number line, 0 in the middle, and under 0 you have minus values, above 0 you have plus values, 0 level. So pride, you take it as, the quantum of pride you take it as minus value. The more proud you are, minus value is more, let us say. Pridelessness means 0, no pride. Humility means above the 0. Okay? Okay? Just to give us, because this type of examples will help us to understand these things. What is the difference between humility and pridelessness? On the number line, if it is above 0, that is humility. Below 0, that is pride. 0 is pridelessness. So just because you have reached 0 does not mean that already you are positive. Correct? So first you come to pridelessness, then you develop humility. Because pride is the opposite of humility. Pridelessness means there is no pride, there is no humility. I am not proud, okay? But then I am not humble either. So humility, pridelessness, non-violence. Srila Prabhupada speaks about this non-violence, that it is not only not killing other living. It is non-violence means don't be violent to others with your words also. Because violence with words actually is worse than violence with physical violence. We all know that, right? Because if you are hurt physically, in few days you will recover. When you are hurt by somebody's words, through this Janma you will never forget. All Grihasthas are aware of this truth very well, right? Because every day we are facing this truth. The kind of violence that we undergo, only we know. So, non-violence actually means that not only, because immediately we'll think I am not at all a violent person, but go home and then we know how violent we can be. Huh? So, non-violence is a sign of knowledge. Huh? This one of the items of knowledge. Knowledge means also that you are not violent. So how we have to understand this thing is that as I gain more and more knowledge, I should automatically, these qualities will show in me. So this is one of the reasons why we need to understand these things, because otherwise, we have to have some tangible, measurable thing for our spiritual progress. Ultimately, we understand that bhakti is not a tangible, measurable, no, because it is completely transcendental. But these lakshanas are tangible and measurable. Am I less violent than I was 1 year ago? In terms of my words, we can judge for ourselves. The best judge will be the wife for the husband and husband for the wife. They may comment that yes, nowadays you are not reacting so violently. What happened to you? You lost your sharpness of your sword, like this they will ask. That means, oh, I am making some progress. Now, every time I am not reacting, for every 10 I am reacting once, which is better. Last year, every 5 I was reacting once. Now, every 10 I am reacting once. That means we have become less. And we can also judge. Every day I was getting 100. Now I am getting only 25. Which means the opposite party also has become less violent. No. So, like this, non-violence is an item of knowledge. Next one. Second, very much connected. Bhagavad Gita is beautiful actually. Next one, tolerance. Krishna is the ultimate super teacher. He is. If you are able to link even little bit what he's trying to say, then we understand what a great treasure this Bhagavad Gita is tolerance. You have to tolerate, only then non-violence connected to tolerance. Humility is connected to tolerance. You see? Next, simplicity. So simplicity in words, in deeds, in life. How we approach life. We should have simplicity. In our words, we should be very simple. In our deeds, we should be simple. So this is how we practice simplicity. Approaching a bona fide spiritual master is a more philosophical side of it. Cleanliness. Prabhupada speaks about cleanliness both internal and external. External cleanliness is very easy. As you become a practicing devotee, you will bathe once, twice, thrice a day as required. You know it. That is actually the easiest part is physical cleanliness for a devotee. The internal cleanliness is the most difficult thing. Internally, how we cleanse ourselves. Because if you start listing the internal impurities, buy a 500-page notebook and start writing. We can write novel. Internal impurity novel, if you start writing, you will write Mahabharata, 24,000 verses. So, cleanliness, steadiness, no need to say. How unsteady we are, we know. So, steadiness also is an item of knowledge. Self-control. Again, now violence, non-violence, everything related to self-control also. Tolerance also related to self-control. All these things have to go hand in hand. Renunciation of objects of sense gratification, that we do over a period of time. Absence of false ego, again very, very difficult. The moment somebody touches our false ego, then we become like, the 100-hooded cobra we will become if somebody touches our false ego. You will find always that all our expressions of violence manifest when our false ego is touched. We become very, very sensitive when our false ego is touched. And that is the job of the Acharya. So read the purports of Srila Prabhupada and you will find that your false ego is being smashed everywhere. Our false ego keeps getting smashed. So approaching bona fide spiritual master and false ego goes hand in hand. The spiritual master's job is to keep knocking this false ego. Okay? Perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. Let me understand over a period of time. We have to look at all the gross things and the subtle things. So these are things we understand. As we grow older, we know all the difficulties. So whatever Gita speaks, we can see and then we also start experiencing. So then we know, okay. By the time we grow older, hopefully, we should completely lose interest in taking birth again. Because factually we undergo difficulty. That is Prakriti's way of teaching us also. So that happens, and then detachment, very subtle, very difficult. Freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, very subtle, very difficult. Even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events. This is related to all the first few things that we spoke about. If those first few things we are able to fix, then this will happen automatically. Constant and unalloyed devotion to me. This is key. If this is there, then all the other things will get taken. Constant and unalloyed. Again, extremely subtle, extremely difficult. Constant is also difficult, unalloyed is also difficult. Unalloyed means like the gopis of Vrindavan. That is unalloyed. Gopis and gopas of Vrindavan. Totally unalloyed. They have no business except the pleasure of Krishna. unalloyed devotion of the gopis is expressed in many leelas of Krishna in Vrindavana. Very notably, this is something we have to always remember. We have many instances of unalloyed devotion throughout the Srimad Bhagavad Purana of many types of devotees of Krishna. We have seen. I would just like to share one which has impacted me a lot. So I would like to share that. When Krishna and Balarama were being taken by Akrura in the chariot, and the chariot is leaving Vrindavana to Mathura. And the gopis are discussing that this Akrura, his name is Akrur, but he is actually the most cruel because he is taking away our life. You know. And then the gopis are not allowing Krishna to leave. And Krishna is very distressed. Gopis are even more distressed. Actually, we cannot make out who is sadder than. So then, as a final resort, the gopis will lie down in front of the chariot and tell Akrura, now you ride the chariot over us. Anyway, we are dead. So at this ultimatum, now everybody is stumped. Akrura does not know what to do. And Krishna previously has tried to explain that, Abhi gaya, abhi aya. I'll just go and I'll come back. I'm not going anywhere. I have no life separated from you people. So where will I go? Even if I go, you think I can survive without you people? Like this, he's trying to console them. They are not to be consoled. Then again, Krishna gets down from the chariot and then he tells them, don't do this to me. So then the gopis, they get up. Then they will ask, that if you go, we will be very, very unhappy. We know that you also love us so much and you will also be unhappy. Huh? But if you don't go, they're asking Krishna, if you don't go, will you even be a little bit unhappy? They're asking Krishna. So Krishna says, actually, I am going because I have now found out that my parents are imprisoned by Kamsa. So isn't it my duty as a son to go and release them from the, that is the only reason I am going. If I'm not able to do that, immediately the gopis, they moved out. This is unalloyed devotion. So if it gives even a little bit of distress for Krishna, they are willing to undergo the greatest agony of their life. Does it matter? Unalloyed devotion. They told Krishna, you go. So wholeheartedly they allow Krishna to go because of their unalloyed devotion to Krishna. Because unalloyed devotion to Krishna means only Krishna's happiness matters. If my action will displease Krishna even an iota, then I don't want it. Although it may give me all the transcendental pleasure, which was the dhan, or which was the only possession of the gopis was the transcendental happiness they were getting out of their association with Krishna. That they gave up like this. Let it go. Doesn't matter. So this is our devotion. So if we are able to even possess a little bit of this kind of unalloyed devotion, then all these 20 items of knowledge will automatically manifest. So constant and unalloyed devotion, to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place. So aspiration to live in a solitary place does not mean that you go sit alone. That is there. Solitary place actually means to shut down all that noises inside the mind and become solitary. Currently, we may close the door and sit and try to chant, just focus on the holy name. The mind is making so much noise, It is better if you go and sit in Manama center, that will be better. The mind is noisier than you take Manama Center or Kolaba in Bombay or wherever, whichever noisy place you can think of, Ranganath Street in Chennai, Madavidi in Mylapore, anything you take, the Chala Market in Trivandrum, mind is actually louder than all these places. So solitary place means being really solitary so that why we need that solitary place so that we can focus on Krishna. Detachment from the general mass of people, which we understand, accepting the importance of self-realization. This is another yardstick which will give us an understanding of where we stand. You know, how much importance we are giving to self-realization is also an item of knowledge. Philosophical search for the absolute truth. This is the 20th. So if you see by the numbering of it, philosophical search for absolute truth is given as last. Because if you in the middle, when you get this constant annular devotion for me, actually everything else will get taken care of. So that is sort of placed in the middle. And then on this side, all the other external attributes are given like humility and others. And then the internal items are also given. All these items, they all have an external and an internal side, whether it is humility or pridelessness or tolerance, everything. So Krishna says all this is knowledge, and then everything else is ignorance. So as long as we are able to practice and develop these 20 items, then we are situated in the platform of knowledge. So not to think that, and then he speaks about the super soul being present everywhere. This is again the Jnana section. So you will find that it is all very, very philosophical. Then he says that thus the fields of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to it. So ultimately he brought it down to say that now I explained all these things, but only devotees will understand this. And when they understand this, they attain my nature. That means they come back to me. And then he speaks about nature, cause and effect, living entity in the material nature due to the cause and effect produced by material nature, which means that the living entity is forced to take birth repeatedly in the material world because of the arrangement of the rules of the material nature, which is what we are all undergoing. So, how the Paramatma is different from Jivatma is that he is not forced. That already Krishna explained in the fourth chapter that Sambhavami Atma Maya. So I am coming on my own, but none of you are coming on your own. You are all forced to come. So that's another difference between the Jiva and the Paramatma. And then some perceive super soul through meditation, others through cultivation of knowledge, and still others through working without fruitive desires. Again, he speaks summarily about Nishkama Karma, and then about Dhyana, then about Jnana. Because this chapter is all about knowledge. So, one who can see that all activities are performed by the body which is created of material nature and sees that self does nothing, actually sees. In the beginning, we spoke about how to see. So, Krishna now says how one actually sees is that when he sees that I am not doing. Again, you will find that these are all discussed from 13th to 18th chapter when you go, except for the gunas part of it, you will find everything else is discussed by Krishna previously also. Okay? So that is what is happening. And then those who see with the eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in the material nature, attain to the supreme goal. So this is what we discussed in the beginning, that knowledge, how knowledge can open the door for moksha. Krishna says it's like this in the 35th shloka of the 13th chapter. Krishna says that if you know the difference between body, knower of the body, and they can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in the material nature and attain the supreme goal. So that means this way also you can actually, by building on this knowledge, you can open the door towards liberation. So 13th chapter gets concluded like that. And then when we move on to the 14th chapter, in 13th chapter it explains how the living entity is entangled with Prakriti because of his desire for enjoyment. Chapter 14 explains how material energy binds the soul through the three modes of material nature. So in 13th chapter, there is an indication that the material nature binds the living entity because of his desire. We understand the one most important thing that binds the living entity to the material nature is desire. So the yogic process is to become desireless. The bhakti process is to desire only for Krishna. You understand? The yogic process, you ultimately gain samadhi. That means all the adhis become sama. You become equipoised, no adhi. We spoke about the number line, no? The zero position, desirelessness, which means I have no more material desires. Bhakti process is one step ahead, moves on to the positive of the number line, and you desire only Krishna because desirelessness is a very stage which is not very stable. The desirelessness, because the living entity by nature has desire. So to make him desireless, first thing is that we have to endeavor so much, and then how long can you remain without desire? You understand? Okay. So therefore, 14th chapter now speaks about the three modes of material nature. The three modes of material nature, which is again 14th chapter also is for a student of Bhagavad Gita, it is very important in the sense that this will give you understanding about yourself, about everybody else, and why something is happening the way it is happening. 14th chapter is fantastic for practical application of knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. Like we see, morning you go to office, the boss is shouting, and you're wondering, you'll go back to your desk and what is wrong with this? A normal person will react, what is wrong with this man? Why is he shouting at me first thing in the morning? You study the 14th chapter, you will find ample reason. You will actually empathize with him. Poor fellow, now I understand what he is doing. This is the practical application of Bhagavad Gita. And sometimes we wake up, we ourselves will be either angry with the wife or the husband or the children or angry with ourselves mostly. Some days when we wake up, we have absolutely no interest in doing anything. Happens. And then we are wondering, some days while we wake up in the morning, we don't even want to get up from that lying down position. We go through that. True. Sometimes we are so active, we don't know how we became so active. Say, you ask the chai drinking person, after drinking one chai, he will work double speed. Before in our company, when we were having meeting, so one manager said, management stopped tea and coffee in the office. I'm just giving a practical example. And then they said, the cost cutting, we can't, this tea coffee monthly is costing the company so many lakhs. Company has some 900 employees. साले सब daily 4 चाय पियेंगे तो कंपनी का क्या होगा? So company stopped. So management meeting is going on. So one manager stood up and said, sir, no, all staff, morning some 10:30, they are all going one by one outside to chai shop to drink chai. And then they are returning after some 10-15 minutes. Again, evening, sir, they are going 3:30. Another 15 minutes lost. And some are not going, sir, because they don't want to spend their money. And he said, sir, double disadvantage for company. So big manager stumped, what is happening? He said, sir, the 10 o'clock chai gives him energy to work double speed till 12 o'clock, sir. And the 3:30 chai makes him work double speed till 6 o'clock, sir. Now, by not giving this chai, you are losing his productivity. And the other fellows who are drinking chai, you are losing their productivity or half plus half, almost 1 hour a day, sir. If you calculate all this time hours multiplied by the salary that you're paying, sir, you'll be actually losing more money. So, manager did not, I immediately understood because I am student of Bhagavad Gita. What that man says is correct. Because mode of passion is very, very important if you want to perform at work. That is why devotees have become overbuilt and very poor performers at work. With chai ka urja nahi hota hai na. This all will another one, yes, more important. Yes, I am not saying that. Chai is a lighter example I took. So you see, devotees are like, why? Because as you become more sattvic, you know, at a rajasic level, your performance will suffer. Because you study and if you're actually seriously studying Prabhupada's books, no, how can you go and perform so well in office? Because Prabhupada keeps on like, you are not this body, this is a waste of time. Understanding all these things, how can you actually, you cannot be very loyal to your employer. I'm telling you. If you're still so loyal to your employer and working so hard, that means something wrong in your reading. Only two things. So, the three modes of material nature, Sattva Guna, Rajoguna, and Tamo Guna, how it is acting on the living entity is very practically explained by Krishna in this 14th chapter. You know? So, we understand how these three modes of material nature are acting. So, Krishna is saying the eternal living entity connects with the material energy through conditioning by the three modes of material nature. So, actually, our connection with material nature is through the gunas. That is why, in order to detach from the material nature, you should detach from three gunas. You should transcend the three gunas. Because Sattva Guna, although it looks very good, and compared to Rajoguna and Tamoguna, is much, much better, but still, one is conditioned by the mode of goodness to happiness, passion to fruitive activities, ignorance to madness. So, Tamoguna is very bad. You should definitely try to give it up. Rajoguna will ensure that we are stuck here for birth after birth after birth after birth. So, what about Sattva-guna? Sattva-guna binds us, although it elevates us to higher material planets, okay, to more subtle types of enjoyment. There is enjoyment in Brahmaloka also. On the platform knowledge, there is enjoyment in Brahmaloka. When you go to Swarga, you have much more subtle. It's not, once you move from this Bhur level to Swargaloka level, once we move, this bodily level of enjoyment platform is completely gone. You know what they portray in all these serials and movies, don't fall for it. They don't do this drinking and all those things. It doesn't happen in Swarga. There, the level of enjoyment is much more subtle at the level of mind and intelligence. As you go higher to the Siddhaloka, to those planetary systems, Janaloka, Tapaloka, there at the intellectual level, there is enjoyment. Understand? It's like you see, two fellows from IIT, they will be talking to each other and they will be laughing, but they will be talking artificial intelligence, data sourcing, this and that, and they will be very actively engaged. You will sit in a stump. What What enjoyment they find in this, you don't understand. In this world itself, we see like that. If you see Vishwanathan Anand and Magnus Carlsen speaking, they will be speaking how the root will move from here and how the knife can cut there. Some intellectual level of enjoyment is there. I'm giving an example. Or you see two music enthusiasts speaking to each other. Have you seen classical musicians speaking to each other, or people who learn classical music very seriously when they speak to these two? You know that Raga Alapana, the third charanam, you know, how he is breaking that raga, you know, like this. The Arohanam is like this, and the Avarohanam is like, what is it? They are enjoying. It is not some gross physical enjoyment like somebody drinking and enjoying. No, this is also sense enjoyment, but you understand, as you grow, as you go to the higher planets, your enjoyment becomes more decent. That's all. But enjoyment is there. So these are some examples I'm saying. When we think of enjoyment in this material world, this type of very gross enjoyment is there. You go to the lower planets, this gross enjoyment becomes much wider in this world. If you go to Atala Vitala, Sutala and all, this nightclub that you see here is nothing. Atala Vitala, Sutala will have much better nightclubs, much better dancers, much better music, much better liquor, everything there. And there, the physical capacity to enjoy all these things will be much higher. You understand? In this world, you know, they will drink 3-4 glasses and they are flat. There are 40 glasses also, still you will be energetic. So these are all these levels, various levels of material enjoyment, depending on how strong Tamoguna is. So the lower planets, grosser enjoyment, Tamoguna mixed with Rajoguna will be very prevalent. We go to the higher planets, Rajoguna with Sattoguna will become more and more prevalent, and as you move to like Brahmaloka, it will be Sattoguna. You know? And they will be enjoying in search for philosophical search for truth. Understand? So that level. But Krishna says that take all these planetary systems because goodness will bind you with knowledge. That is why, whether you are in the platform of goodness or you are on the platform of passion or on the platform of ignorance, everything will bind you. So that is why Krishna says that if you act in these modes, you will have these the modes of material nature. Krishna will speak about. If you work in the platform of goodness, this is the result. If you work in the platform of passion, it will actually bring you what? Passion always brings distress. And in Tamoguna, if you work, all results will be opposite. That means nothing good will happen when you act on the basis of Tamoguna. In passion, you will think that something good is happening, but eventually that good will turn to bad. You know? How? Because everything in this material world has got a shelf life, and eventually everything will become rotten. So whatever results we are getting out of working on the mode of passion, everything is perishable result. So when it perishes, your happiness will go, your distress will be there. And if somebody can understand this, Krishna says, if somebody can understand that this is how these modes are acting, it's very important to be able to understand what is happening to me in terms of the impact of the modes of material nature. So not only is it enough to know that this is the nature of Sattva-guna, this is the nature of Rajoguna, this is the nature of Tamoguna, it is also important that you understand how it is working for me. Because our idea is that I want to get out of here, means I should very clearly know how these three things are making me. You would have seen that illustration in the Bhagavad Gita, how, you know, the Prakriti is there and it is like a puppet. The three strings are there. The three strings are the three modes of material nature, and how she is moving the three strings. The living entity is tied by these three strings and then moving like that. Actually, we are not moving on our own. We are like the puppet being operated by the three modes of material nature, and the three modes of material nature is controlled by Prakriti or Mahamaya. She is the external energy of the Lord, and therefore she makes sure that we are bound by these three. So we are tied by these three gunas, the jiva, and then he's acting as if a puppet in the hands of these three modes of material nature. And when one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord who is transcendental to all these modes, he attains my spiritual nature. So Krishna now says in this chapter that first, as I said, how the mode is working on us. Second, to understand Krishna's position vis-a-vis the modes. So now you may ask how Krishna is connected to the modes. Krishna is not connected to the modes. Prakriti is moving the modes. Prakriti is working under the instruction of Krishna. Understand? So we have to understand that Krishna is the ultimate controller. Prakriti is controlling on his at his behest. Prakriti is acting, and she is using the three modes of material nature to control me. If I understand that, then automatically we will be able to transcend these three modes. And then Krishna says, one who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So, Krishna, it's very beautiful that he gives you the problem and he also gives you the solution. So, in the 26th verse of the 14th chapter, Krishna is giving the solution for the problems created by the three modes of material nature. Mam chayo abhyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityeta brahma bhuyaya. So you will come to that Brahmabhuta stage if you engage in devotional service unfailing in all circumstances. That means you should not fail every time the three modes of material nature is attacking. If we fail in our devotional service, then it's very difficult. Then Krishna says, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. Then he speaks about that Brahman level, because now he is going to come to the Purushottam Yoga, which is the ultimate knowledge. So before that, he says that Brahmano hi Pratishta Aham. So he is now gradually leading Arjuna to the subject matter of the 15th chapter, which is called Purushottama Yoga. So in Purushottama Yoga, now Krishna is going to explain to Arjuna the ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge is to detach oneself from the entanglement of the material world and to understand Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who understands Krishna's supreme identity surrenders unto him and engages in his devotional service. This is the sum and substance of the 15th chapter called Purushottama Yoga, Yoga of the Supreme Person. This is a 20 verse, very small chapter, which is recommended by all the acharyas that one should study this 15th chapter. One should by heart this 15th chapter. Simply by hearting and chanting this 15th chapter, you can even become Indra if you want. So if you start by hearting 15th chapter, Indra will send some apsara and try to attract you. So be careful. Okay. You have high hopes, nothing like that will happen. Okay, I'm just joking. So at the end of 14th chapter, Krishna describes that one transcends the modes through devotional service. But to attain devotion to him, one needs detachment from the material world. So Krishna begins chapter 15 by explaining the need for detachment with a metaphor that compares the world to an Ashwatha tree. And then that is the first 5 shlokas of the 15th chapter is that Urdhva Moolam Atashakam Ashwattham Prapurave. Everybody knows, I'm sure. It is about that Ulta tree, the Ashwatha, which is actually a reflection of the original tree, which means that this material world is actually a reflection of the spiritual world. Then from 6th shloka till the 20th shloka is actually Purushottam Yoga. 1 to 5 is about that Ashwatha, how to detach oneself from the material world, which is a reflection of the spiritual world, and one should surrender to Krishna and attain the spiritual world. That is 1 to 5. And then from 6, Krishna speaks about transmigration, and then Krishna's position as our maintainer. In this chapter, the 12th to 15th shloka speaks about Krishna as our maintainer. We should become attracted to Krishna by knowing his position as our maintainer and also as the compiler of Vedanta, and the knower of Vedas. Then there is 3 shlokas of knowledge in the 15th chapter, which is the 16th, 17th, and 18th shloka, are known as the Shloki Jnana. That is the 16th, 17th, and 18th. And then the 19th and 20th shloka describes how knowing Krishna means knowing everything. So again, that is like the summary understanding of Bhagavad Gita. That if you know Krishna, you know everything. If you don't know Krishna, knowing everything becomes a complete waste. Because you don't know anything. Which is to say that I may know Veda, I may know Shruti, I may know Smriti, I may know Purana, but if I don't know Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all this entire Vedic knowledge is waste. So that is how the 15th chapter Krishna speaks about. So how that tree, the initial part of this chapter is about the tree, which we all know that how that tree works. It has branches and it has fruits. So it's all about material activities and how the fruits are there and how the fruits bind you to the material world. And understanding this to be a reflection, which means there is no reality in this material world. Krishna is making everything crystal clear, but somehow it all remains very, very unclear for us. And then from 6th shloka, as I said, Purushottam Yoga starts, Natad Bhasayate Suryaha, Nashashanko Nabhavaka, Yadgatva Nanivartante Tadhama Paramama. He starts telling Arjuna that this is my place and this is one-way ticket. We are always wanting, wherever we go, we want return ticket. Make sure that we get back to our situation. Right? Make sure that return booking is there. Without that, we never go. But Krishna is telling this is the one-way ticket. Sorry, you cannot go back to the material world. So if you have any plan of coming back to the material world, then don't read Bhagavad Gita. Because he says, Yad Gatva na nivartante. Once you come, that's it. So for the pure devotee, this is the ultimate reassurance. For us, this is what is our biggest concern. If you are not surrendered, this actually is like a concern to us कि क्या होगा, जाएगा, वापस आएगा, है कुछ उधर, ये सब सच है क्या? गोलोक वृंदावन नाम का जगह कोई है? क्योंकि जो आ गया वो आके बताया नहीं. Our problem is our faith. We actually don't have. Srila Prabhupada said this, that my disciples actually have no faith in Krishna. And one of Prabhupada's Catholic statements when he was in a particular mood, he said like this once. So our problem is that actually we don't think that Krishna exists. We actually don't think that Golok Vrindavan exists. We actually don't think that he is tending to the cows there. So we are reading and repeating. When we factually understand this thing, we'll be ready to go back. As simple as that. So Krishna is giving that assurance that yad gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. And he says, why are you suffering here? Mama evanshu jiva loke. You are my Angsha, but simply you are here struggling. Manashashtani indriyani prakritisthani kashyati. You are sitting here controlled by Prakriti, the five senses and the mind, and you are struggling here. So, first he told, come, don't come back. And he's now putting our position in perspective and saying, actually, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Simply struggling. And you are actually an Amsha, that means you shouldn't be struggling. Correct? I am Amsha of Krishna, so why should I be struggling or suffering or having distress? Because he has no struggle, he has no suffering, he has no distress. All those around him are also as happy as he is. There is no difference in happiness. The pure devotee has same happiness as Krishna has. Both are transcendental. So Krishna is reminding us that you are my Angsha and you are suffering here. That means the moment I factually realize that I am Angsha of Krishna, my suffering should end there. So which means my suffering has not ended because I have not factually realized that I am Angsha of Krishna. Now you see knowledge, how it helps. Now you see how knowledge helps. So factual realization of that should be there. Krishna explains that further. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see this. Jnana Chakshu. Without having that Jnana Chakshu, you will never be able to see. That is why Yudhishthira Maharaj said this is the most wonderful thing in this world. You see people dying, but you think you will not die. Now you may counter by saying, no, I know I will die. But you don't behave as if you will die. Right? Smashana Vairagya we have. When somebody is dying and somebody is dead, we will say, इतना ही तो है. आदमी के जीवन में क्या रखा है? एक दिन सबको इधर जाना है. उसको लेके गया शमशान में जलाया, बाद में वापस आके खाना खा के सो जाते हैं. हो गया. वैराग्य उधर ही छोड़ दिया. इसीलिए इसको बोला स्मशान वैराग्य. शमशान में जाओ तो सभी वैरागी है. जाते जाते राम नाम सत्य है, राम नाम सत्य है. राम का नाम ही सत्य है, बाकी कोई सत्य नहीं है. चढ़ा के जाएंगे तब राम नाम सत्य है. वापस आए तो राम गया. आया नहाया खाना खाया तो रियलाइजेशन गया चौपट. So this is how imperfect or improper our knowledge is. Everybody knows this actually, yes. Whether you study Bhagavad Gita or not, you see that people die. That means that everybody dies. So this knowledge given in the Bhagavad Gita, without even reading Bhagavad Gita, practically Prakriti is demonstrating to us, but we don't understand. Why? Because these three modes of material nature are acting here. With Mahamaya, she is Avarnatmika Shakti. She is covering the knowledge, so you will not know. Even though you see, you can't see. Even though you see, you are not able to make sense of what you see. Like the 2-year-old child seeing the clock. Although he sees, she sees, cannot make sense. So Krishna says that is the foolishness of the people. So if you are a fool, you don't understand. But the endeavoring transcendentalist can see clearly, Krishna says. So even without becoming perfect transcendentalist, you should be able to see. And then Krishna speaks about I am the fire of digestion. I am seated in everyone's heart. The 15 sloka that everybody knows. Sarvasya aham sannimishtaha. So this is another understanding of how Krishna is sitting in all our hearts and guiding us. He's giving the jnanam. If you want to know Krishna, he gives you the knowledge. If you want to forget Krishna, he lets you forget Krishna. So now many times devotees have this doubt of why is he making me forget again? Again, that same choice, no? Because Krishna is the Supreme Father and Krishna is supremely merciful. If you want to forget Krishna also, he says, okay, forget me. I don't mind. He says, I am the writer of Vedanta and I am the only knower of the Veda. Actually, Veda is fully known only by Krishna. He can only be fully known by him. So simply by knowing that he is the knower of Veda, you become the knower of Veda. This is the secret. How by knowing Krishna you know everything? But Krishna knows everything. If I know Krishna, that means as good as knowing everything. And if I know everything and still I don't know Krishna, then finished. Right? So, like this, Krishna speaks about how every living entity in the spiritual world is infallible because he is situated in that knowledge. So he cannot fall again because he's perfected the knowledge. And therefore he has become complete in his surrender. When knowledge becomes perfect, surrender will become complete. Right? Because our knowledge is imperfect, we are not able to surrender. And then he says that, and then there is that supreme personality. Krishna now speaks about the Paramatma, the 17th shloka. And then he says, because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. So Purushottam Yoga is where Krishna will very conclusively establish himself as the supreme person. I am Purusha Uttama, the topmost Purusha. So this, the impersonalists will find it very difficult to explain these shlokas. Because Krishna keeps on saying me, no? That person Krishna. They cannot say this is Shakti, they cannot say that this is all pervading, they cannot say that, Nirakara, you cannot say because Krishna says me. I am celebrated as the Supreme Person. I am celebrated as the Supreme also, he says. Let us say that, we are Vaishnava, so we added the person there. But when you say I am the Supreme, then what does it mean? No? Krishna says I am, that means Krishna. So that also Krishna establishes. And he says, Yomam evam asammudho janadi purushottamam satsarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavena bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of God without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore himself will engages himself in full devotional service unto me, O son of Bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures of Sinless One, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise and his endeavors will know. So now this Krishna says, this chapter, no? This chapter is actually, Krishna says, the sum and substance of knowledge in the Vedas. So the 15th chapter is very much Veda related chapter. So if somebody has a Vedic bent of mind and they want to find out what's in the Vedas, simply read chapter. Because he says that this is the most confidential part of Vedic. We are always interested in the essence, Why are we studying only Bhagavad Purana? Because that is essence. There are other 17 Puranas. But the 18th Purana number 18 is the essence. So we are studying only Bhagavad Purana. We should always become Saragrahi. You have heard the term Saragrahi Vaishnava? जो सार को ग्रहण करते हैं वो वैष्णव सबसे अच्छा है. We should always go for the substance and not the form. Because In material world, everything is about form. Means the external show. But spirituality means internal substance. So, most confidential part of Vedic scriptures is there in the 15th chapter, Purushottam Yoga. So, Krishna says, if he understands this chapter, he will become wise and his endeavors will know perfection. That's how Krishna concludes the 15th chapter. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much. So, we will stop here and